Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. Today we have a special guest. It's Andrew Glaze. You wanted to run a brief intro on yourself?
I missed it. I'm sorry. Say it again.
No, you're good. You want to just do a brief intro on yourself?
Oh, brief intro. Yes. So my name's Andrew Glaze, and I am from California. I am a fire captain and ultra runner, and yeah, I'm married. I have 3 kids. I run a lot. I'm I'm sure that's the main topic of this is how much I run.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I would
Yeah,
definitely, yeah. But so I'm curious. So obviously you have a streak going of 100 miles. I think you're around 203 weeks
just hit 204.
before. Awesome.
Yeah.
I would be so curious to hear balance. Now, I didn't know you had children. I knew you were married. So you're a fire captain. Like, how do you find balance? Like, have you found obviously cons from the streak itself?
Not really. I mean, I guess the negatives are I don't get a lot of sleep. Because the balance is that I tend to do my long runs in the morning super early while everybody's sleeping. So, um, as a fire captain, like I don't get a lot of sleep already. So that's probably the big negative is like my sleep schedule is like really, really compromised. But beyond that, like I think I've done a pretty good job of um balancing everything out so I still get time with the kids and time with the wife and not really a whole lot of time for anything else, but that's okay because running's what I like to do. So that all works out for me. Um, yeah.
So, and then what would you say are some of the pros that you found from continuing the streak?
Well, I mean, it keeps me very focused. It keeps me very consistent, which I think translates into life in a positive way. I try to like build on small goals to like reach big goals, and by like keeping a streak going where it's a weekly streak, so it's like every day matters, but then again every day doesn't matter because I have a whole week to accomplish it. So you have a little bit of grace with bad days or a couple bad days or whatnot, but you can still accomplish it, which I think is an important way to tackle life as far as breaking goals into like small little manageable sections. um it's obviously keeps me in shape. So that's a good thing, and I love to run, so I get to run a lot. So that's another positive. But keeps me ready for ultras. I can jump into an ultra anytime I want, and I'm pretty much good to go. Although sometimes I'm a little sore. It all buffs out.
So, and is the consistency something that you cultivated as you've gotten older? Or is this something that is kind of was instilled in you early?
I think I've had it sort of a lot of my life. It's the consistency I think comes from like a borderline obsession with whatever I do that I really like. So when I find something I like, I do it like 110%. I'm like all in. So, I've done triathlons in my life and I was like all in. All I did was focus on running triathlons and, racing those. And there was a time when I like really wanted to get big and strong. And, I was going to the gym twice a day, lifting like really, really heavy weights. And, that was my obsession. So, but I found if you want to get better, if you want to improve, if you want to succeed in whatever the goal is, you have to just, really chip away at it in small little increments. And you can't get discouraged when it doesn't happen instantaneously. I think that, a lot of it is that people want instant gratification. And if you really want to accomplish something worthwhile, there's no instant gratification. So I don't know exactly when I taught myself that lesson in life, but I definitely learned it young that, the big goals that are worthwhile, you have to put in the time. You don't just get them. It's not, you don't just win a lottery and all of a sudden you can bench 3 plates or, run a marathon. You have to slowly put in the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say you have, because I personally do, I struggle with like almost celebrating the wins or small wins along the way because I just look at everything as like, well, this is the next level to get to the next level. Um, like when you live in the life of delayed gratification, do you personally struggle with like celebrating along the way?
Um, I think my celebration is like my feeling of like utter soreness and destruction, and I do like enjoy those moments, but beyond that, it's on to the next one. It's like I might enjoy like a day of being like really sore, and then it's on to figuring out how to recover and get back at it so that I can continue on. But it's all part of the process. So I mean, for me, there's no finish line. So I'm not so worried about like celebrating as it's just like continuing on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be curious to hear like, have you seen some effect on your children just from your personal consistency in the streak as a whole?
I'm just say about my kids. What did you say?
Yeah, have you seen like a positive influence just from like so you're running and being consistency?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my kids know that, being active is like a positive, and like they definitely, look up to me as kids do. Um Honestly, I think my kids are more impressed with like the fact that I have like a large social media presence rather than like my actual achievements. I think they're, a bit jaded when it's like, "Oh, how long do you run?" And it's like, "Oh, I did a 100 miler," and they're like, they're not gonna be impressed, like, when my daughters date some boy and he tells them, like, "Oh, yeah, I ran a half marathon," like, they're not gonna be impressed. They're gonna be like,
Like
"My
right
dad
now.
does that every day, twice a day." So,
Yeah,
but,
no,
you know, when you have a dad that runs 20 miles a day, that becomes normal to you. So,
yeah,
that's their life.
that's awesome. And how do you personally like obviously you're running so many miles. How do you structure like your eating? I'm sure it's just a game of like getting in calories, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I love to eat. I'm not one of those people that struggles with food. I know some people do, but that's not me. So, I mean, I eat a lot, and I have no problem consuming like, around 5,000 calories a day. And I mean, I eat a big breakfast. I normally run fasted. Well, that's not the right medical term. Like, I normally run without food or water unless it's super hot, and then I'll add water to the mix. But most of my like 3 4 hour runs, I'll like run with no food or no water, and then I'll eat like a huge meal when I'm done running, like almost as soon as I'm done, and then yeah, then it's like then I'll snack, and then I'll eat a huge dinner, yeah, and then repeat. So I I am I eat a high carb, high fat diet, so they tend to have more calories than the other types of like proteins and whatnot. So it tends to be easy to like maintain my weight. I mean, if I get really crazy like into training, running like really long distances for multiple days in a row, I might lose a little weight, but I can always put it back on like when I'm at work and I'm not running as much.
Absolutely. And I'm be curious. So obviously you're running at a slower pace, and I'm assuming that that's so fatigue doesn't build up so that you can go out there the next day. But what would you say is your reasoning for like obviously running at a slower pace majority of the time?
I mean, I'm like running to train to run ultras, and ultras are run at a slower pace. So um, I'm trying to get really really good at finding a pace that I can hold forever and not get tired. Because if I'm gonna run like last year, I did 350 miles in 7 days. So or like I've run a couple 200 milers or just like 1100 milers last year, and you have to find that pace that like you can like hold and just be able to like maintain it. And it's never a zone 3 or zone 4 or zone 5 pace. It's always a zone 2 pace. Plus, you don't want your heart rate like spiking like crazy in like a long ultra because you don't want your heart to get tired because you're out there for like, you know, 20 to 30 hours. So I basically I train how I run, And I found, I'm almost 46 and I've been running for 20 something years. And I've always found that the number one cause of my personal injuries is speed work. So at some point in my life, I said to myself, I don't really want to get injured anymore. I'm going to stop doing speed work. And it's been awesome. So, I know coaches will tell you differently, and that's their prerogative, and I'm not a coach, but I do know that for me personally, speed work causes injuries, and I've run pretty much injury free, even with my high volume, by not doing speed work. So
And that just obviously goes back to like what you're training for sure.
yeah,
I've
I mean, I'm not training for a 5K. If I was training for a 5K or even a marathon, I would have to, you know, because that's more of like you're sprinting for a short period of time, like, implement speed work. But like I'm running 100 milers plus, like I'm not running really anything other than that. So there's coaches will tell you otherwise, but me personally, as a non-coach, I don't see the benefit in doing speed work if your goal is to do like a 100-mile race.
for sure. And then I'd be curious to hear your other recovery like remedies almost because if you're saying you lack sleep, like obviously you gotta be doing other things to kind of keep yourself healthy.
Yeah, sleep suck. I mean, that's the worst part about my life is my sleep patterns, and I know that sleep is probably probably the cheapest and easiest way to recover. So it's a bummer that I can't do it more. But I don't know. I mean, I take a variety of supplements, and it's like the list is so long that I can't really like get into it all that much. But like maybe they help, maybe they don't. Um, I'm always like trying new things and sort of like, biohacking myself to see if this one works, if this one doesn't. Um, I eat a vegan diet, which, very controversial. Meat people will tell you that meat's the best way for recovery. Vegan people will tell you vegan's the best way for recovery. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but it works for me. I drink a lot of water, a lot of water. Um, Again, I'm one of those people that like does not have a problem like putting down like a half a gallon of water like at a meal. Like I love fluids, so I'm lucky there. Um, what else? I cold plunge, I sauna, I get massages regularly after big efforts, like very like deep tissue, painful massages, not like I'm going to the spa for a day, but like I like have anxiety before I walk in because I know it's going to hurt so bad. Massages. Um, Yeah, I mean, that's, oh, and then like, I'm like a big fan of active recovery. So after big efforts, like a 100 miler, like I always try to run 3 to 5 miles, like 10 to 12 hours afterwards to keep the body moving. I think motion is the lotion. And if you just keep moving, that it's far better than to, take time off. People like run a race and then, take a week off. And I don't think that works out so well. But maybe it does. I don't know. I'm not a coach again. So, but for me, I'm a big fan of active recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you're doing a ton. I'm sure you hear like people complain about like I don't have time. And I would just be so curious to hear like your rebuttal to that.
Well, I mean, the rebuttal is that everybody has time, but we all have things in life that we enjoy. So, for me, I don't watch TV. Um, I don't drink alcohol. I don't go out and party. Like my social life is pretty limited when it comes to like my family, and that's about it. Like I, I basically just spend time with my family and run and work. So, which I think most people would like not be happy with, and that's okay because they're not me. But this is the life I have developed for myself that makes me happy. So, um, I yeah, I mean, you just have to make choices. Like, what's more important, like scrolling TikTok or watching Netflix, or in that same period, like go run 5 miles. I mean, it's the same hour. It's like how you spend it. So, um, and I realize that everybody has different lives, and some people don't have like childcare issues and can't do that. And there's always workarounds. I'm not going to tell people how to live their life, but when my children were young, I had running strollers and pushed them in running strollers, and I have a treadmill and would run on the treadmill. I'd do laps around my house. I mean, there was ways for me to get my miles even when they were young. So luckily now they're old enough to babysit themselves if I'm out for a run. But um, they also go to school all day, which is, nice as well because I can get my running time while they're at school.
Absolutely. And I actually live a very, very similar life. I'm not putting up the numbers you're putting up, but when it comes to like it's running, it's work, it's family, and it's kind of just like rinse and repeat. And it's true when you break it down to this simplistic form, like it's happiness for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I literally, I don't think I've like actively watched television in like 4 or 5 years. Like if it's on in a room, I might glance at it, but like it's like not even a thing to me anymore. In fact, if I look at a television, like when it's on, I start to feel like anxiety. So it's like it's an interesting experiment because you know I think at some points in my life I was definitely addicted to it, and now it's like I look at it and I'm like, oh man, that is terrible. It just it feeds me with dread, and I'm a lot happier not exposing myself to all that, I don't know, information that's coming at you
Yeah,
that you really have no control over.
absolutely.
So,
I'd be curious to hear like kind of who you were for the run streak before running and kind of how that picked up.
I mean, like I said before, I've been running for over 20 years. So that puts me in my early 20s. Um, yeah. So, I mean, before running or exercising at all, it was, so I'm trying to think how I can like go through this. Like, I was when I went to college at 18, I was super inactive and I smoked cigarettes. And all through college, I smoked like cigarettes very heavily, like maybe 2 packs a day. Um, and was overweight at times, just super inactive, high resting heart rate. I took a class once and I remember they asked us to like take our resting heart rate, and mine was like 86. And this is at like 22 years old. So, which, yes, it's in the normal range, but like in your early 20s, your resting heart rate should be like 60, or like even less. Um, my resting heart rate now is like 40, maybe like 45, if I'm
Mm,
like really working out hard. Um, so just an unhealthy person. And then after college, it like continued on that way. Um, I had an agreement with my dad that I would not drink in college and he would pay for college. So I stayed sober all through college. And then the second I left college, I like went hard in the paint when it comes to drinking and drugs and just like having a good time. Um, which then of course spiraled me more into this like world of not being healthy and not I don't know, living up to my potential, I suppose. And I mean, it basically got to me to a point where I started having like anxiety and depression and um, you know, just felt terrible. So despite like masking it with drugs and alcohol, like which would make me feel temporarily good, like it it ended up not being such a good thing. So yeah, I got into exercise to combat that because I didn't know how else to fix the anxiety and depression. I didn't want to take a pharmaceutical pill. In the early 2000s, everyone's solution to anxiety and depression is just take a pill and you'll feel better. And um, I'm not a big believer of that. I mean, I'm sure it serves a purpose for some people, but for me, that's not something I want to like do with my life. Even though I was doing drugs and alcohol, it was like I didn't want to do pharmaceutical drugs. So, especially not in my early 20s. And yeah, started working out and like basically changed my life because it made me feel so good. And then that cascade effect of like, oh, you feel good. So you're going to do this more. And then you do it more and you feel better. And then it's like the next thing you know, like all that anxiety and depression's gone. And here you are 20 something years later doing a podcast on exercise. So, it's weird how that all happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And something you say that I definitely want to touch on is smile or you're doing it wrong. And what does
Yeah.
that mean to you?
I mean, it has a lot of different meanings. I think it gets used a lot for, um, I try to use it a lot for like races because like races are like a short period of time, like a day or two. And in that day or two, there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And so sometimes you can look at races as like life because life is long, but you have a lot of like highs and low points. And so when you're in life and you have those like low points, you need to figure out like how to get out of them. And a lot of them, it's like a mental shift. It's a lot of like mental work. I mean, some things are out of your control. If your parent dies or something like that, like obviously that's a low that's you're just going to have to embrace. But other things. Hold on one sec. Can you shut that door? Um, Other things you can like sort of work on mentally, and so the smiling, if you smile you actually like feel better, and it can shift that like negativity in your brain into like a positive sense. It doesn't always work, but it also can like make other people feel better. So it's like if you're at a low point in a race or you're at a high point in a race and you smile at somebody that's having a bad race, they instinctively smile back at you. And then that becomes like their reality. Now they're smiling. And it's like, even though they were feeling bad, like now they're feeling better. So, you know, it's, it's a lot of just about mental like shifting and like getting back into that like positive mindset when maybe you're not at your best moment in life.
Yeah. It's so true. It's such a transfer of energy. I've felt that like deep in long runs too. And obviously it hurts and sometimes it sucks. And yeah, you could have that interaction that kind of like just brings you back to life.
Yeah, I mean it's weird how it works, but I mean it does. I mean, you feel good giving the smile and telling someone, "Hey, good job." They feel good receiving it, um, and it's just those little micro shifts, like in ultras, when you're in like deep in the pain cave, or like you've been out struggling by yourself for a while, and then you see somebody, like even if it's like you come into an aid station and all the aid station people are like super nice, and like it gives you like new energy. So um I mean it works. So and just in general, like if we're out doing ultras, if we're out working out, if we're running races or whatever it is, the exercise wise, like we're just lucky to be out there doing it, because someday you're not going to be able to, or like something could happen. I mean, yesterday the best marathoner in the world, right, was like in a car accident and died, 24 years old. So he's at the top of his game, and you know now he's dead. So you just never know when something terrible like that could happen. You could be in a car accident and like lose a leg, or be paralyzed, or you could come down with like a cancer or a horrible disease or something. You just never know when it's going to be your time. So staying positive and doing things is like it's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. It really it's so fragile and that just kind of speaks to too like it's just the kindness is contagious.
Yeah, yeah. Positivity wins.
Yeah,
That's what I find.
absolutely. And I'd be curious to hear like is there and I would assume there's not, but is there like an end game with the streak or is there like how do you plan on continuing it or navigating it as it goes?
Yeah, no, there's no. I mean, 4 more weeks and I'll be at 4 years. I don't. I don't know. Like, I it'll end someday. I know. It's like it's not sustainable to run 100 miles every week. There's just too many things that could happen in life that um yeah, I mean, especially with the amount of times I race and my job being so dangerous, like something's going to happen. But it hasn't happened yet. So I guess, I guess we'll just keep marching forward. And when it happens, it's like, I'm just going to keep running and I'm going to keep doing what I do. So, yeah, it, it, it just will happen someday. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
I wish
I
I had
mean,
a better answer, but
no, it
I,
definitely makes sense.
it's like everyone always asks me if I get nervous before a race, and I do, really, really nervous because I know all the things that could happen that would like end the race because I've DNF'd a lot of races. And I mean, that's the same with life. Like I know all the horrible things that could happen to me where I wouldn't be able to continue the streak. So, I mean, I'm a human and eventually like that should like work itself out, right? I mean, eventually something will happen.
Yeah. It's oddly
Cuz
like
my network it's
uh,
weird cuz it's like
I think it's just a little delay, but I think you're good now.
okay, I don't know why.
It's yeah, it's I have to be honest, like I obviously I see it all the time, and it's oddly like it's like gives like almost like reassurance and also like motivation, added motivation where it's just like I have this run today, but even if I end this week at 80 miles, like this guy did 100 for 4 years. Like you could do this run. Like it really does motivate. I'm sure it does for a ton of people as well, but it's really cool to see.
Well, I mean, that's like a good side effect for me. Like, I mean, it's not why I started it, but now, like, it's appreciate inspiring people, and then it's reciprocal, and people inspire me. So I get a lot of messages about, you know, I did my first ultra, I did my first 5K, did my first, half marathon, whatever, and I find all that very inspirational and really really great. So it's kind of like a big circle where it's like I'm inspiring people, but people are inspiring me, and the running community and is really strong and it's really positive, and I'm just lucky to be part of it. And it's still sort of bizarre to me that somehow I have this giant following where people follow my journey, but here we are. So
Yeah. I'd be curious to know, so, like, what was your intention with starting social media? Because like you've hit on it a couple times, but like obviously like the big following wasn't a goal. So it's almost like cooler that it was like natural.
yeah, I mean, I think it was just I don't know. Like at first, I was just making funny reels on running because I run a lot, So it's like I could like easily put together like something that like made fun of like runners' problems because I experience them all the time, and that's how it was for a while. And um, Instagram was competing with TikTok, and so like they started like pushing reels over pictures. I was always a picture guy, but I was like an early embracer of reels when everyone else was like, "Oh, that's cringy. Oh, you look stupid." No, making fun of me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna keep doing it," because it was like I was getting like a lot of views, and then it just spiraled out of control to the point where now I have so many followers I can like barely keep up on my DMs. Um, but yeah, at first it was just like kind of funny videos, and now it's just me. So it's like real easy for me to maintain it now because I'm literally just documenting myself. So if like you follow me, you're really just following me, and I'm not giving you any advice, and I'm not coaching you. I'm not like, hey, this is how you stretch, or this is a good workout. Like it's just literally like the life of Andy, and for whatever reason, people like following along on the life of Andy, even though all I'm doing is pretty much running every day. So yeah, it's worked out. I mean, TikTok is a whole other animal. It's I can put together like longer style videos, kind of like YouTube style videos, and I think people watch TikTok like the new generation like watches TikTok like my generation watches television. So it's like I can put together like a 10-minute video, and it'll get 15 million views, and people are watching it like they're watching like a television show. So I, it's a different format than Instagram, but I've been like equally um, successful over there, just like showing. sort of like the behind the scenes on ultra running and stuff like that.
And I'd argue honestly why the following probably did come is because you are being yourself, and we unfortunately live in a world where people are playing like parts. So you being organic and authentic is kind of like just selling itself without even trying.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely grow slower than like the people that are like sponsored and things like that. But I think I get more engagement than them. Like they might have 300,000 followers on Instagram, but like I get more likes and video views than they do because it's like I'm not selling you anything. It's like I'm just Andy. I mean, my page is literally AM Glaze. It's not like not. I mean, I'm not trying to like sell you a backpack or like or like a gel or something like that. So, um, I mean, I like the slow growth because then it's like I get a little bit more rooted with all my fans. But if you see me at a race or you see me like walking around, like what you see on social media is like who I am in real life because it's like there's no difference. So it's a lot easier for me because I don't have to like I'm not like David Goggins that has to like create a persona that he is online, but then like when you meet him in real life, he's not really like that. That's his like his act, his like I'm Goggins, but like what you see online with me is like Andy, and when you meet me at a race, like I'm the same way. So it's very easy for me just to be myself and shoot it with like a camera.
Absolutely. And the last question I ask everybody is what keeps you going? Like when you're deep in a week where you got to hit 100 miles or you're deep in a race, like what's kind of either like a mantra or just something you tap into mentally?
I mean, it's different depending on what struggle I'm dealing with. I mean, a lot of times I think about people in my life that can't run or can't do what I'm doing, and I think about like doing it for them, and I think about if they had the opportunity to be in this position that I'm in, even if it's like 80 miles into like the worst ultra I've ever run, and I just am like in pain and hate my life, and like I'm like, well, I mean, this person can't be doing this, and if they could, would they take my spot? And I know they would in a heartbeat. So I just try to like put it into perspective that like I'm super lucky doing what I'm doing, even if it is super, super hard. Um, I also like have like a weird thing where when I really start suffering, I remind myself that this is like what I wanted. Like I'm always striving to like get to that point where it's like really, really hard, where like I want to quit and I want to give up. And then I like in my mind, I think like, wow, it took you 85 miles to get to this point. How lucky are we to be experiencing it right now? Like, and I try to do like a mental shift where like I remind myself that like the entire point of doing it was to get to this point, even though this is the point where it feels like the darkest and the like hardest and you know all those things. Like it's not really about like running a race and feeling good. It's about running a race and getting to the point where like you want to quit and then not quitting. So um yeah, it'll still hurt and it'll still be like sucky, but in my mind, at least I'll be like embracing it as like a positive instead of like a negative just because I'm like hurting or feeling bad or like the conditions are terrible or whatever it is that's making me, you know, feel weak at the time.
Absolutely. It's like knowing that you did the work to get to that pain. Like, yeah, I absolutely agree.
And it's hard to get to that point in life, I mean, it really is. So if you can get there, it's like a little secret cave that most people never experience. So um yeah, I enjoy it.
It's true.
Also,
And
there's also like if you're really feeling bad, a lot of times you just need to eat. So I'll also go, hey, have we eaten enough?
right.
Because if sometimes you just feel bad because you know you just need some food. So sometimes I'll
Absolutely.
just eat and pull myself out of it.
There you go. Whatever works. But I really, really appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.